Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rosen Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I'm really pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunello Rosa. Lots going on, as always, but this week we'll be talking about the US presidential race as it ramps up with just sort of 3 to 4 months to go, and how it will be affected by the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and the sort of more controversial Project 2025 that's just emerged out of the Heritage Foundation. Um, just this last Saturday, there's an assassination attempt. The headlines are calling it the worst sort of Secret Service failure in about 40 years, dating back to the assassination attempt on Reagan. But Brunello, I mean, could you start off by giving us some of the facts on what happened this weekend, and how has this affected the ongoing race? How has this affected Trump's chances?
Yeah, so the fact of last weekend are pretty simple to describe. There was an assassination attempt to Donald Trump. It was a shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was in fact a Republican registered voter, that shot a bullet, well, actually a series of bullets. In fact, one of them unfortunately killed one of the participants to the rally, and immediately after it was neutralized by the snipers. And as you said, lots of conspiracy theories have emerged from all sides, as you can imagine, whether it was something staged, why the Secret Services were unable to stop the shooter when it was in fact indicated to the police, where many people present there, and there would be all sorts of conspiracy theories going on for the foreseeable future. So that is not going to change. The question is what happens from then. So, as we know, there are two camps, the Democratic camp and the Republican camp. The Republican camp, in fact, is holding its own national convention these days. And in fact, there has been the pick of the vice president, the running mate of Trump, in the name of Vance. And now it's obvious that the candidate would be Trump. Not there was any doubt, but now it's 100% sure. In the Democratic camp, the situation is worse, as we know. Lots of people are asking Biden to step down and allow somebody else to race. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, among latest, even Barack Obama is apparently considering the idea of asking Biden to decide and allow someone else to run. However, if you look at all the polls, nobody's actually faring better than Biden. Clearly, he's not helping himself when he calls Zelensky President Putin, or he says, talking to Kamala Harris says Vice President Trump. Clearly, this is something that shows at least a sense of fatigue. But the point is, his legacy is extraordinary. 50 million people jobs created, inflation returned to effectively target, also thanks to the Fed stance. And there are plenty of other good results that the president has reached. And so people are saying, hey, you don't want to destroy this legacy with a disastrous campaign. Just step aside and allow somebody else to run the game. It's easier said than done because there's no actually evidence that anyone would do better than Biden in the presidential race.
And it also sort of comes at a time when potential other alternatives to Biden are being considered. Could you speak a bit about those and how likely they are to actually convince Biden? Because after all, right now the decision rests with Biden if he wants to actually step aside. Legally speaking, all the delegates have already been assigned to him. But also, what could the sort of assassination attempt on Donald Trump, what effect could it have on his election chances?
So some of the names that have been touted are those of Gretchen Whitmer, that is the governor of Michigan, which is in fact a key swing state. So that bringing that state home for the Democrats will be important. Others say no. I mean, it's clearly Kamala Harris. And people could make other names, could be Newsom from California. But again, these people are virtually unknown outside their state. And so bringing up their profile in 4 months, in able to kind of take on Trump in November is a massive exercise that I don't think anyone can actually help. And clearly, Biden is in a difficult position because he's in a position in which he needs to express sympathy for a candidate that in reality is causing this violence, the one that is calling people to revolt, to go to take the streets. He has said that he will pardon all the January 6th insurrectionists and who has condoned all sorts of violence created by the white supremacists during his presidency. This is Trump, and so it's very hard for Biden to strike the right balance. Now, what I think it will happen, though, is that what happened to Bolsonaro just before the election, he was stabbed, and that attempted assassination propelled him to the presidency of the Brazilian Republic. I think this will happen almost inevitably with Trump. The same way, he will portray himself as the victim. He will say, "See, I showed you. The deep state is against me." Even if this guy, this 20-year-old guy, was a Republican, was white, was not an immigrant, let alone a legal immigrant. There's nothing to do with all the Trumpian rhetoric. Definitely is not part of the deep state at all. But I say, the deep state, the Secret Service, didn't protect me enough. So that's the time for the cleanup that I've been advocating for such a long time. And who's offering the blueprint for this cleanup? That's Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation. They have been offering policies and policy platforms since the Reagan era, so there's nothing new. Fact is, there's the newest edition of their policy is really radical in so many respects, not just because in terms of policies, which are ultra conservative in nature, from the abortion, total ban on abortion, to the increase in carbon emitting energy sources. So kind of a 180 degrees change compared to Biden green policies and so on. But then it provides a database personnel that can be installed in the White House and the rest of the government from day one. That day one that Trump said he was going to be a dictator. And it goes beyond this. And his Schedule F is the key of that. Now, the Schedule F seems a bit technical, and it is. But in reality, it's something that Trump already approved at the end of his presidency, which basically means that public sector employees are not loyal to the state or the constitution anymore, but they are loyal to the president. They become the instrument for the president to drive his policy agenda. Now, this is a massive shift because if somebody refuses to adhere to that agenda, for example, because it's too radical, too conservative, too right-wing, call it as you want, they can be kicked out. They will not enjoy the protection that the civil service currently enjoys. So this would be a massive change. Now, in this, we have been quite clear for quite some time now. We said that the victory by Trump would mean the end of the US liberal democracy. It would remain a sort of electoral democracy or a semi-autocratic state. But I think at this point we go slightly beyond. I think Heritage Foundation is providing the platform to install a sort of nationalistic Christian confessional state, something the US has never been, and effectively sort of authoritarian regime in which the president, now immune from all the acts accomplished during his own presidency, because that's what the recent ruling of the Supreme Court says, okay, this is a president that can do almost anything. And the civil service is not going to be there to provide the checks and balance. And the Supreme Court is not anymore a balancing force. In fact, is implementing Trump's proposal, even when Trump is not in government. Imagine when he will be in government. And so I think this attempted assassination will catapult Trump at the helm of the sort of authoritarian state that the US is likely to become from November onward.
Yeah, it's interesting how as sort of ultra conservative and sort of extremely right wing as this policy agenda, the Project 2025 is, Trump has made efforts to distance himself from it. But that's sort of only very much in the run up to the election. Several of the key sort of authors of the report are key Trump allies, likely to be in the next cabinet. And so who knows sort of how much Trump's actual policy agenda will converge with some of the ideas that are part of Project 2025, especially if, the Republicans control every aspect of Congress and the White House, as is now seeming increasingly likely to be after the assassination attempt and sort of failed attempts to find a sort of viable alternative to Biden for the Democrats. So much to watch in the next 3 or 4 months as, headlines around the world continue to be dominated by the American presidential election, something we'll be closely tracking as well. But as always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you. Until next time.